I'm Rick Johansson, and this is the Iron Echo Design channel. In this video, we'll do a step-by-step Inkscape tutorial, and I'll show you some tools you can use to make vector art. So in previous videos, we did this desert scene and then a twilight number here, but today I want to do the earth with like the moon coming up over the horizon. So specifically, you're going to learn how to do the gradient tool, and in this case, we need to do a triple gradient. So we'll take it from the darkness of space down to the shine of the horizon, and we'll add the blue atmosphere there. I'll show you a simple way to make clouds with the drip pen tool, and we'll go over the settings for that. And finally, the spray tool I've been using for starfields. It's so simple. You just clone any dot or any object and just go after it. So let's begin. I'll start with grabbing the Create Squares and Rectangles tool, and you're going to draw out a rectangle. The color's all messed up. So let's start with this. This is your fill and stroke menu. This is the colors of your objects. If you don't have it, it's this paintbrush thing in the corner. Now I've got a stroke, which is the border. I don't need it for this project, so on stroke, I'll X out of that. Click on fill, and let's just start with black. So we're starting with black because whatever color you start with, that's going to be the base for your linear gradient. So we're going to start with the gradient. This right here, these like rectangles, this is the linear gradient tool. Click on that. And if you don't see this bar immediately, click pencil, and that'll make the bar come up. Okay, so the way it works is whatever the square is the starting point where it's full opacity, and the circle, the default is it's taking it to full transparency. You can move the gradient around as you please. So in this case, we're going to make it vertical. Another trick is if you hold Control, it'll lock in the vertical so it's nice and even. But let's fix the colors now. So the circle is set to full transparency. So in this case, if I bring right here, this is the amount of opacity, either one works. If I pull it back to full, now it's all black again. So if you were trying to go from black to white, you would click on the circle and then change it to whatever color you need. It's pretty cool. So you can, any color. So in this case, white. But I'm going to bring in I'm going to cheat and go faster. I'm going to bring in the colors that I already know work for this project. So just cheat a little bit. I'll actually put the hex codes in because I've had people ask in the comments, what are they? You can go with any colors you want, but this is just one reference here. So, okay, where did my bar go? You just go back to pencil. It'll bring your bar back up. So I want lots of black night sky space. And then we'll start for the circle. We'll do eyedropper tool, and I'll go to light blue. So right there, it's already making a little bit of gradient, not the best shape. If you want to add another stop in the gradient, it's real easy. Just double click somewhere, and then I'll create another node on your gradient. So in this case, I'll make it this brighter blue. From there, let's truncate it down. And usually I try to avoid making like distinct lines like this, but I do want this because I think it looks like that's the ozone layer. So we need that to protect us. So let's go forward with that. That looks good. Let's grab the Create Squares and Rectangles tool, and we'll make the planet. But for this gradient, I'm going to go with the base color of this color tan, and I'll choose linear gradient. The bar shows up. I want the darker side over here, and then right now it's transparent, but that's going to be a lighter gray. So dark side is the correct color. Click on your circle, bring it up to full opacity, and then you can choose the color. So that looks pretty good like that, and I'll connect it together. The reason I extend it way out like this is as I add different pieces to the project, I find it's a lot easier if I can grab them quickly without having to click through things. And then at the end anyway, I'm going to create a clipping box and just stamp out the part of the project that I want. It's just part of my workflow. You can do it or don't do it. But for now, I want to add a nice glow on the horizon. So we'll go with Bezier pen tool. And it doesn't matter really how exact or unexact you are because we're going to blur this thing out. So there we go, just a random shape. It's coming out white, which is the color I want, full opacity. So here we go. So if you go to selector tool, now I can move this around. I want this to be coming up behind the earth, but on top of the horizon. So let's go with hierarchy. These are your hierarchy steps. If I have my object selected, this will go down one step, and that's about where I want it, right underneath. I'm just doing arrow key to get it around there. Let's blur it now. So over here, you're on your fill and stroke. It's a white object. Blur is right down here. And there you go. So I just blur The blur looks good, and then to make it just blend in better, I'll reduce the opacity right about there. So I ended up being 25% blur, 95% opacity, and this is going to be like, I'm going to bleed this into the clouds that we'll make next. We're going to make our cloud starting with just the circle tool, and we'll make just a cloud cover up against the horizon. So we've got some opacity issues here. I'll blur it out, and let's drag it real nice and wide in case we have to change it later. Right there is good. Let's zoom in. And for the cloud itself, for the dark and the light of the cloud, let's go with the Draw Calligraphic Brush tool here. So on no preset, change that to dip pen with 5. Thinning just means like literally it takes into account the speed you move the mouse and it changes the width. So keep it on 10, but the effect works best if you change tremor to 50. And I'll show you what happens. So let's see what color we're on. If I just draw it out, this will be the base of our cloud. Just let your imagination go with it. And that's white. So let's make that gray. I'll make it super dark so you can see it at first, and then we'll change it to the way we want it. So that's going to be the base. The darkness of the cloud. We'll blur it, change the opacity. Then I'll actually duplicate that, fix it into a bright white. And we have clouds. That's about the fastest way you can make a cloud. I'm going to click off of the earth here. I just want to be selected up somewhere in the sky. I'm going to do Shift and group just the cloud part. Then holding Control, I'll dump out, Shift, I'll dump out the sky. Control G will group it. And with that, I can stretch it because I want it to, there we go. I want to see where it fits in. Right about there's okay. I'm going to now cheat again. I'll do Control D to duplicate that. And then over here, you see these change directions. I'll just change the direction, make it a lot smaller, and then take the whole thing's opacity out. And I can use it again above it. When it starts to come together, that's why I like to bleed things off the edge. I can grab that underlaying base and then move that up or down so I can kind of hide the horizon line. All right, so for the next set, the clouds in the foreground, I first want to lay down like a shadow, like the big supercell of clouds is casting a shadow on the earth. So let's grab the Bezier pen tool and then just literally draw out a shape. Not much of this is going to be seen. That's pretty good, but it can't cover the clouds on the horizon. So if you have it selected, go to hierarchy, drop it below your clouds, and then you can blur it. Not too much. We're going to cover most of this. I don't like this here at all. If there's some parts you're worried about showing up on the final edit, go to Edit Paths by Node, and you can just move it. Right there looks good. Okay, so for the foreground cloud, we'll go back to Bezier pen tool, and this time I'll make a little bit more careful what I want to draw. Let's make that white. Opacity almost all the way full. Blur it out. From here to make more sense, so we go back to the dip pen, not the drip pen, dip pen. I have it on 10. Let's go back to 5, make sure the tremor is 50, thinning 10, and let's draw the dark part first. I think it'll be white, but we'll correct it with the gray. Give it some texture up here too. All right, so make that gray, darker gray, blur that out. Now this time, instead of doing duplicate, I'm gonna just make my own white. First, let's make it white so I can see where I'm going. I'll just delete that in a second. Let's give it a nice white highlights. Then from here, you can always go back to the Edit Paths by Node tool if I wanna extend my base layer. All right, that's good. So then we'll go Shift, grab all of that. Anything you don't want, you can get rid of. Control G, and it went underneath. Let's bring it back. If it goes away like that, just go back to hierarchy. And now we've got a bigger cloud cell we can play with. How about that? It's gonna bleed off the edge a little bit, but we'll correct that. So I like how there's some distinction between here. This, do I want that to be? I might put a little bit of a gray darkness. Let's try that. So let's just go on the fly here to add a random shape, and let's make it grayish, almost white. Let's see what happens if we drop it under here. Go to my steps. Yeah, I do like that. Okay, and then blur a little bit. Do we want it that darker? I just wanted to give it a little bit more contrast there. So let's put one more cloud in the very foreground. So I'll go back to dip pen 5, tremor 50, and we'll just draw There's our gray layer. There's our white layer, blur that. A little tweaking, shift, grab the new cloud we made, shift, unclick the box so we can group it, and then we can move our cloud, resize it. I'm gonna put this one visually in the center because we're gonna move on to the moon and I wanna have like a vertical sight line that kind of connects it all together. Actually, before the moon, let's do the stars. Let's move up and I'll show you an easy trick. Go to circle and ellipsis tool, zoom in so you can draw a very, very small circle, almost like a pinpoint, make it full white, full opacity. Take a look at what you have. So the spray tool, if you select that little star, if you go to spray tool for the settings, it's going to allow you to shoot out whatever image that is. So if you had a triangle, it'll shoot out triangles. In this case, it's a little tiny dot, it's gonna shoot out dots. And then for width, that means this like radius you got here. Amount is how many shots per when you hold it down. Scale is the amount of variety between the sizes of the stars it's gonna shoot out or whatever shape you have. And then scatter is the amount of like randomness. So I'll show you what I'm doing. Select whatever the item is, go to spray tool, and then just click around and you got stars. So those look too big to me. So let's start again, Control Z. I'm gonna zoom in and make this even smaller. All right, let's try it again. So I have the little star selected, I go to spray, and then that's more like it. I just want to have a subtle hint of stars. I just held the mouse down. That's exactly what I wanted, just like that. So you can go bigger, smaller, whatever. Just remember, if you accidentally have something else selected, like let's say I select this thing, and you spray that, it'll see, it's like, reminds me of like an old ColecoVision game. Just dated myself. Okay, so let's make the moon now. The moon is pretty simple. So grab the circles tool, hold shift and control. You can draw out what looks like a full moon, which doesn't have much artistic value. So let's make it more interesting. A theme of the tutorial has been gradient. Linear gradient we'll choose. And then edit, the pencil tool. Then we can choose which way the light is hitting it. It looks good right there. Let's add a third stop inside of there and maybe go touch of color, just like a hint. I'm just doing it by sight. I want to take the hint of the earth and put the same like color value up there. That's close enough for now. So let's get out of there, grab the whole thing. I'll change the opacity because I want to have some depth as opposed to just like suspended there like a still life. Maybe we make it bigger. Maybe we do a couple moons. I'm going to go with that. We're just mixing it up on the fly. It's Friday night. That's how crazy we're going to be. 3 moons really mess up the tides. I was just kidding about the 3 moons, but I put them vertical off camera, and I actually think it adds a little bit to the composition. I won't change the thumbnail, though, because this is a little odd. But let's wrap it up. So we're going to go out into no man's land, grab everything, shift to get rid of that color palette, Control G brings it all together. And for the clipping box, doesn't matter the color. All that matters is that you can see through it. So I'll reduce the opacity. When you have it lined up, just keep it selected, hold shift, get everything else, then go to Object, Clip, Set. I don't know if the moons are adding or detracting from this, but there we go. There is our interplanetary reconfiguration. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for future videos, let me know, and thanks.